What's up everyone? We are back with another Fridays video in which I talk about something that's important to me. Today our topic is vulnerability and why I believe it is so important in relationships. Now the way I define vulnerability is allowing anything that feels personally raw or tender to come to the surface in front of another person. No T users, don't click off the video just yet. So allowing those things that are more personal or high stakes personally to come to the surface in front of someone else. Whether that be opening ourselves to criticism in front of others, or sharing a personal wound that we have, or even just letting someone be around while we are experiencing an emotion. I personally believe that vulnerability is a hugely powerful thing that can strengthen our relationships, and I'm here to tell you why. This is because fundamentally we are all relational beings who at our core wish to be loved and understood by others. And if we're not exposing these more vulnerable parts of ourselves, we're actually limiting the person's ability to love us deeply in that moment. Because true love deepens when we allow others to love us in our wounds and hard places. Love has a limit when it's easy. It's when love becomes hard that it deepens, when it becomes a choice to continue to love through the hardships. Unfortunately, we live in a world that teaches us to fear vulnerability because if we're vulnerable with people, we're just opening ourselves up to get hurt, right? But this is driven by fear, not reality. The reality is that people who actually love you are much less likely to hurt you in your vulnerability. And there actually is a way to ensure that we are seeking validation from others in our vulnerability much less, and we'll get to that later. So I'm here to convince you that maybe facing that fear of vulnerability isn't a bad thing, and actually a step further, that facing that fear is the answer to true freedom, both within ourselves and in our relationships. Disclaimer. Classically, in this video, I do not mean to imply that I know the particular circumstances of each of your experiences and circumstances. Vulnerability is hard, and I know we're not all there yet, and that's okay. Also, we are all responsible for using our own judgment and discernment to choose with whom to be vulnerable and how much to share. I'm by no means saying, go out and be vulnerable and share with everyone. I'm just here trying to share with you a message that has genuinely changed my life for the better, in the hopes that you might be able to grab a kernel of truth from the message for yourselves in your own life. My view is that vulnerability is beautiful. And I'm speaking from experience because I spent like 8 years of my life keeping people at an arm's distance. And it was only like in the last 3 years or something that I started going to therapy, learning how to open up. The therapy allowed me to get used to the idea of speaking about my wounds in a safe, open space for like the first time in my life, which took away some of the fear of sharing and helped me to realize that sharing doesn't have to be so daunting. Over time, this helped me to open up to my friends, and allowing my friends to see my wounds has ultimately helped me to feel more free and safe and secure in my friendships. Because let me tell you, with a friend who truly loves you, the reaction is never going to be as bad as you think it is. We tend to build up like hugely weird reactions in our minds about how people will or won't react, which is completely normal. But in my experience, I found it's like never as bad as you think it's going to be. I'm not trying to trivialize the idea of opening up and saying it should be easy, but just trying to offer you some reassurance that these sort of ideas and demons that we make up in our minds aren't true a lot of the time, and sometimes fear holds us back, which again is normal, but sometimes facing the fear is like the best thing we can ever do, by reminding ourselves as well that those are lies that our brains are trying to tell us. I've also felt more loved by people and more secure in my relationships since I've let the skeletons in my closet come out to my friends, and people have still deemed me lovable and worthy of sticking around for, even after I've shared this ridiculously daunting thing with them. And by far the most beautiful lesson that I've learned about vulnerability is that vulnerability begets vulnerability. What I mean by that is that being vulnerable with others inspires others, generally speaking, to be vulnerable to us in return. I'm not even kidding. Since I learned how to be truly vulnerable, in like 90% of cases, when I've shared something that I felt to be truly vulnerable with someone in the moment, they have then been inspired to share something vulnerable with me back in return. Why? Because human beings crave and respect and deeply seek what is true and real and good and beautiful. And vulnerability is real. What is more humbling than someone sharing a deeply personal, daunting wound with you, trusting us in that moment with the wound that they're sharing? trusting us to take care of them in that moment, trusting us with the privilege of loving them in that wound. Vulnerability evokes compassion and empathy in others, and as relational beings, we naturally want to love, so we naturally want to participate in shared human experiences with others and relate to each other. In a few cases, after someone has shared something vulnerable with me after I shared something vulnerable with them, they've said something in return like, I've never shared this with anyone before, but I was moved by your vulnerability. I'm not sitting here trying to say that it's by my merit that that happened. I personally believe that it was God's grace that gave me the strength in that moment and the eyes through which to see that I'm still lovable in my wounds, which then brought out the courage instead of the fear. I'm trying to say that vulnerability is beautiful and it has power. Another fantastic thing about vulnerability is that we have to be vulnerable with ourselves in order to face the realities of our lives, our past mistakes, and the wounds that are lying deep down. We are so scared of facing ourselves and what it is that we see deep down in the mirror. And so I think being truly vulnerable with yourself is actually one of the hardest things about vulnerability. But the wonderful thing is that once you do the hard work, you gain the capacity to be even more vulnerable as a result of your own self-awareness. Because think about it, it becomes much harder to pretend with others when we can no longer pretend with ourselves. Here's a truth that is very rarely spoken about on the interwebs. We all believe that our safety lies in the hands of others and whether or not they accept us for who we are, which again is very normal and okay. Don't get me wrong, it is important obviously that we do feel safe with others, but healthy vulnerability doesn't start with others, it starts with ourselves. Not, do I feel safe with others, but do I feel safe with myself? And I'm going to read a quote from a book by Lisa TerKeurst because I think she says this particularly well. This book is called Forgiving What You Can't Forget, and I'll put a link to it in the description. It is only when your most honest opinion of yourself is also an honoring opinion of yourself that you can stand vulnerable before someone without fear, without walls of pretension, without judgments of each other's frailties, without little lies to cover things you couldn't bear to be revealed. True strength, resilience, courage, and vulnerability starts with our love and respect for ourselves. And I'm not pretending that it's easy to get there. Trust me, one of the first big revelations I had with my therapist was how incredibly low my self-esteem was. The upwards climb from there has been just horrible at times. Horrible feels like an understatement. I've had days where I just wanted to give up because being constantly mindful to my harmful thought patterns and all those neural pathways I'd formed and how they contributed to my behavior, it was just way too exhausting. I've had periods of desolation because of being hurt over and over again, not just by people, but by myself. I've had days where I've just thought to myself, it's too hard. I just can't be a good person. I can't do it. It's too hard. And I'm not saying I've perfectly healed from my wounds now by any means, but I did take an active step after that realization to turn the lens back on myself and work on my own self-image and my self-love and my self-esteem, which involved lots of prayer and meditation, lots of looking in the mirror and actively cognitively choosing to love the person that I saw, which is a very hard thing to do when you don't believe these things. But slowly through doing those things, my self-respect shot up. Why? Because I was doing the hard work. On the hard days, I was choosing to continue to do it. I slipped up sometimes, I'm human, but I was still choosing to get back up and do the hard work. On the days that I didn't feel lovable at all, I was still choosing to believe that I was lovable. I was being vulnerable with myself for the first time ever. I was sitting with myself and thinking, yo, Kristen, people come and go. You're the only one that you're stuck with for the rest of your life. You've got to start being real with who you are, because if you don't love yourself or think that you're lovable or have respect for yourself, how are you going to make it through this life? How? I feel like something we don't talk about in this society a lot is how important discipline is in choosing to do things that are hard. If we just follow the ebbs and flows of our emotions all the time, we would choose to give up most days. But sometimes it's about choosing to have the discipline to believe. Get up, do the hard thing. Get up, start the routine. Get up, go to therapy, have that hard conversation, apologize to that person you need to apologize to. Eat healthily, do exercise. If we follow our hearts, we're not going to want to do those most days. But our brain is there on those days when our emotions are trying to deceive us, and it's telling us to get up and to choose to do the hard thing. And it's really hard. I know it's really hard. But what other choice do you have? You're the only one who's going to have to pay the consequences of not doing the work. Well, aside from your relationships, but those people can leave. You're the one who's stuck with you for the rest of your life. What other choice do you have but to try and make things better by yourself, by being real and honest and vulnerable with yourself and doing the work. I'm not saying it's fair. It's not fair. The reason why we have wounds that make us stop wanting to be vulnerable with ourselves or close us off is because other people have hurt us a lot of the time. That's not fair. It's really not. There are lots of things in this world that just aren't fair or don't make sense, but what other choice do we have? So I asked myself these things, and it took so long. It felt even longer than it actually took, but I actually have self-respect now. I have self-esteem now. I'm on the other side of the hill that I genuinely did not think I was strong enough to climb. This video is full of cheesy metaphors at this point, but who's surprised? There were periods there in that process where I did not have a single piece of energy or love to give to other people. Not a single one. I literally avoided people because I felt too weak to deal with people. And I'm fine with the fact that I did that because it was what I needed at the time. And if that's what you need at the time, fair enough. You know what you need. But now, after doing the work, and I know that there's probably going to be more to do in the future, but the point is I'm not scared of doing the work now. I'm so secure in myself that the stakes are much lower in being vulnerable with others. I know that they have less stakes in my opinion of myself and in how I live my life and how lovable I think I am. So the chances that they're going to actually hurt me are much lower because I've worked so hard on believing the truths that I am lovable, that I am doing the best that I can. I am growing and imperfect, but the point is that I am willing to do the work and I've proven to myself that I can do the work. And the work is a lot less daunting now that I've been through it the first time. So if other people don't believe those truths about myself, their opinions have much less weight. And again, to really hit this message home, the seed that started this realization and this growth was true vulnerability with myself, facing those hard things about myself. And so going back to the greatest fruit of vulnerability, which is that vulnerability begets vulnerability. When someone sees you being vulnerable, they're able to recognize that, hey, this person is going through hard stuff too. I'm not the only one who's going through the pain and suffering of this life. We are both in need of healing and forgiveness. And that, my friends, is the beginning of a whole new depth of love. And the truth is that love needs to be deep. Otherwise, it's not holistic love. It needs honesty, loyalty, trust, compassion, vulnerability. This is where we're going to get really FI. Guys, I know it's hard. It's really hard to do the work. But trust me, it is not as bad as you think it is. I know it feels like it's really bad when you're in the thick of it, and I'm not denying that it is really bad when you're in the thick of it. I can't tell you how many times I thought that my efforts to climb out of the dark pit were frivolous. But now that I'm out of it, I'm not looking back. And if I am looking back, it'll be to recognize how proud of myself I am for climbing out of it. And now I know how to look out for those dark pits so that I don't fall down them again. And if I do, I've got the tools now to catch myself before I fall down deeply into it. Wow, what is with these cliched metaphors? We are humans, we grow, we have tremendous spirit. Don't underestimate that. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Fears are normal and human, but you have more power to overcome them than you think, and then you're probably giving yourself credit for. And I think you'll find, and I'm very hopeful that you will find, that if you persevere in this journey of vulnerability, ironically, that thing that you've been terrified of the most, that is, people seeing your most vulnerable side, will actually end up being the very thing that unlocks the door to freedom. Another metaphor, but truth. Well, that's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video and for putting up with the weather changing. When I started this video, literally like half an hour ago, it was so sunny, and now it's just cloudy and going to rain very soon. Thank you for watching this video, guys. Please give it a like if you related or if you agree with the message. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's join together and talk about the power of vulnerability, and have a great day. You guys rule. Bye.